Alright, so let's start creating some abstractions in our game, and I want to use object-oriented programming as a paradigm to develop this game. OOP is typically a very good way of putting game applications together. If you think about any gaming, everything that you see on a canvas or in like your screen, you can think about them as these are different objects and they interact with one another, and that is sort of the essence of object-oriented programming, that you're trying to model the world, the environment, the application domain using different objects and capture the logic by having these objects interact with one another. So I want to create an abstraction for this rectangle that I'm creating, and I'm going to call this a block. So let's create a subfolder in the source folder. I'm going to call it model, and inside that I'm going to create a new file called block.js. And so using the term block is a familiar idea to game developers. Generally, objects or visual objects fall into two categories. They're either static objects that don't move, and we call them blocks, and then there are objects that can be moved and manipulated as a single entity, and those are generally called sprites. So some of the objects that we have in our game are going to be static, like the brakes that we will put on the game, and like the ball is going to be sort of moving around. So that one is going to be a sprite. Well, let's just start with a block. So let's say this is a class block, and then what I have in mind is to sort of give it a draw operation, but I'm going to make this more idiomatically look like the methods of a class. And so I don't want to create animation here. A block is only responsible to draw itself, not to work with different frames. And so it would be a responsibility of other part of our application to like keep calling the draw to create an animation effect, if that is what's desired. Now, what's more so, I'm not going to have the block to be responsible for clearing the screen. That's not the responsibility of a block. A block should only draw itself. That's all that it should do. It should not update its own coordinate, at least not while it's drawing it. Maybe we're going to add other function to update the coordinate. And these coordinates, they should not be hard-coded. In fact, even the color shouldn't be hard-coded. So what we can do is we can consider the x, y, and the width and height, as well as the color, all properties of a block object. So we can give it a constructor and go here and say that you're going to get x and y and width and height and a color. And so we come here and just do the initialization. So this x is going to be x. And let me just take a shortcut and put the rest of them in here. Okay. And so here then what we want to do is to use those variables, the properties of the class, right? Now, one other thing is that this CTX is the context that gets created from the canvas, and this is something you want to create once and work with it. So you don't want this to be the responsibility of a block to create it. So what we can do is we can pass it. So whoever will call the block class, who will instantiate and then call the draw on it, they will pass the CTX to it, so that block can just draw itself to the canvas. Okay, so this is a good setup for us. Now, before we wrap up this recording, I just want to say that if we wanted to follow some of the practices that are common among object-oriented programming developers, typically those who like write code in Java and C++, information hiding is an important principle. So you would want to create private attributes. The way that I've created it right now, all of these attributes are public and anyone from outside can update them. You've seen how you can create private properties in previous application, the To-Do app that we built together. So we could create the private fields using the hashtag key. But for simplicity, I'm just going to leave it as it is for now. And we want to spend less time on like writing setters and getters and spend more time creating a hierarchy of objects and then putting the logic of our game together.